I think I'm gonna start another TikTok that's spiritual MD so that I can connect with both of those audiences. Then kind of like I'm doing here. So, but today we're really going to talk about hormones, and I want you guys to really understand why I focus on this so much, and why I'm such an advocate for saliva testing so that you can understand this. So, I believe that patients can understand how their body works because your body is so logical. If you just think that your body is always trying to survive, even though you do things to try and kill it, okay? Just think my body is trying to correct all of the stupid stuff that I'm doing that's really hurting it. And then you can start to realize, or you can start to understand how your body works. So today we're going to talk about how so many symptoms can be narrowed down to a couple of root causes. And it's just like, I have a garden, and if you can pull the root out from the weed, then the weed doesn't grow back. But if I keep just chopping off the top of the weed, then it always comes back. So that's how I look at that. The weeds are the symptoms, but they have a root. And modern medicine just wants to cut down the symptoms, wants to cut down the weeds, and they always pop back. Because you know why? Because if it comes back in 24 hours, you need to take that pill again. There's no long-term solution. So now I got you in a bind. You need that pill to chop down the weed every day. So it keeps you going to the pharmacist to get that weed whacker. But if you would just take a little time and really grab hold of what's going on and pull it out from the root, then your problem solved. Your garden can grow and your weeds are eliminated. So we're going to get down to the root and get you to stop chopping off the symptoms. All right. So let's go to the first slide. All right. Understanding hormone balance, your body's message system. Hormones are your body's chemical messengers. They travel through your bloodstream, through the tissues and organs throughout your entire system. And I want to stop right there. They travel through your bloodstream to go to your tissue. Okay. So the bloodstream is just a highway system. It takes something from one place to the other. That is not where the action happens. The action happens in the tissue. The saliva test shows us what is happening in the destination, not on the highway. You got to think, you take a highway to work or some road to work, but you do your work at that destination. Now, you may be texting and driving, you may be emailing, but you go and spend 8 hours or more at work. That's where the action is. So we're not interested in what happens on the highway. We're interested in what happens in the tissue. Okay. So these powerful compounds control nearly everything your body does, from mood and energy to sleep patterns to fertility and digestion. So we wrote the books, the Stress Connection, because these hormones are connected to everything. All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right. We're going to talk about stress. And I want you to understand, not all stress is bad. You have something called eustress, EUSTRESS, and then you have distress, DISTRESS. So you've got to have a little bit of stress to get up in the morning. You got to have a reason to get up. I talk about in Ageless Blueprint, you got to have a reason to get up. If not, you'll just sit dormant, forever. I mean, if you don't have anything to do, you're just going to waste your life away. So you need something that wakes you up in the morning that you have to do. All right. So that gives you alertness. So you want to be aware and alert of what's going on. And then you need a little bit of medium stress. See, I have a little stress that I know at 9 o'clock, you're expecting me to be on this podcast. So I have a little stress built up the night before. I don't sleep quite as well. I have to get ready. I have a little adrenaline flowing. So that's fine. I'm trying to be at my optimal level. All right. I try to prepare. I try to be comfortable, but I want to optimize what I'm doing. But when the stress crosses over here, you start to get anxiety and disorganization. Now, I will tell you, when I first started this several weeks ago, I had a little bit of anxiety. I had a little bit of disorganization because I was really making too much out of the situation. So I had to get back to this level. All right. So not all stress is bad. Our problem is we're dealing with so many distractions, so many things coming at us. The news, your family, your kids, your job, all of this. It can lead to this high stress, and you end up disorganized and anxious. And when you're like that, what does that cause? That causes more stress. Okay. Now, about I started giving this lecture about 20 years ago because I saw a study. It was in the Journal of Metabolism, and it came out in 2002. And again, I've been at this game for a long time, for over 25 years. And this got me interested in stress. So let me just go through this. 43% of all adults suffer stress-related adverse health effects. All right. Now, this is from 2002. I actually have a newer article, and it's even more significant. Now, even back then, 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. So when I saw this article, I said, look, if I focus on stress, I'm going to be right 75 to 90% of the time. I'm like, that's pretty good odds. And so let me really become an expert in stress. And I think all physicians should be an expert in stress. If 75 to 90% of your patients, and that number is higher now, 75 to 90% of all of your patients have stress-related complaints or disorders, you need to be a stress expert. Because if 75 to 90% of your patients have diabetes, you would be a diabetes expert. You would go to conferences on diabetes. You would read articles on diabetes. You would immerse yourself in the treatment of diabetes. So even the diabetes is probably caused by stress. So that's chopping off the top of the weeds and never pulling it up from the root. So stress has been linked to all the leading causes of death: cardiovascular disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis, suicide. That's how important this is. And that's why I keep talking about it. They say people have to hear something 7 times before they really grasp it. So I think this is maybe the second or third podcast I've done on stress. So just know you got 4 more coming, okay? Because everybody needs to understand this. An estimated 1 million workers are absent each day with stress-related complaints. So it's decreasing our productivity, and that stress is responsible for more than 25 billion workdays lost annually. Again, that was in 2002. So those numbers are much bigger now, okay? So common symptoms of hormone imbalance. Now, here are some of the weeds, okay? Just think of these are all coming from a central root. So physical symptoms: persistent fatigue despite adequate rest, unexplained weight gain, especially around the abdomen. Now, I can't tell you how many people come in my office complaining of those 2 right there. Disrupted sleep patterns and insomnia. Acne or melasma, skin discolorations, whether it's rosacea, whether it's acne, whether it's eczema, whether it's melasma. All of that can be directed back or traced back to hormones. So then you have emotional symptoms: mood swings and emotional volatility, anxiety or depression without clear triggers. It's okay to be anxious if there's something to be anxious about, or depressed if there's something to be depressed about. But if you don't have a trigger that's starting that, then that's abnormal. Brain fog and memory problems. I don't know how many patients come in, especially around menopause, with brain fog and memory problems. You get decreased interest in sex and intimacy, and reproductive symptoms: heavy or irregular menstrual periods, severe PMS, fertility challenges, changes in breast tissue and sensitivity. So, I want to, especially fertility challenges. The stress of our environment has caused sperm counts to go down, fertility rates to go down, because ovulation or making an egg in a woman or making sperm in men, it is all based on, does your body think it can handle it? Because reproduction is a stress. Okay, it's a stress on the body. The baby is a parasite. It takes everything it can from the mother, and whatever's left, the mother keeps. That's why a mother's blood count goes down, because the body's taking the baby's taking the iron. So there's that's a stressful situation. That's why a lot of women who are in fertility workups don't get pregnant. And then once they kind of let go and say forget about it, and stop with the stress and the timing of having sex and all that, they get pregnant. So all of this can be traced back to stress and hormones. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, different diagnoses, one common root. Women and men often receive various diagnoses that seem unrelated but share a common underlying cause: hormonal imbalance. The diagnosis of depression and anxiety are polycystic ovary, which can cause the irregular bleeding, irritable bowel syndrome. Hey, why is my bowel irritated? Well, because stress affects your digestive system. Menopause and perimenopausal symptoms, adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue, all have a root cause of stress or other hormonal imbalances. So cortisol, the stress hormone. And I just left Joe Dispenza's 7-day workshop, and he's always talking about people being addicted to the hormones of stress and living in this constant stress state, constant survival mode. You want to move out of survival mode into thrive. You don't want to survive, you want to thrive. And as long as you're in survival mode, you cannot thrive. So you need to be able to handle this. So the stress hormone, how is it produced? It's produced in this gland called the adrenal gland that's right on top of your kidneys. It regulates your blood sugar, metabolism. It regulates your sleep cycles, your day and night cycles, and it regulates your immune system. Your immune system is what protects you from cancer, from COVID, from all types of infections and parasites, is that your immune system needs to be working. And the reason why cortisol dampens all of this, I'll show you this in another slide, is that when you're in survival mode, you're only focused on yourself and your survival this second, okay? That's all you're concerned about. So whether a cancer will kill you in 5 years, or a parasite might cause an infection, or anything like that, your body doesn't care. It thinks that you are in danger right this moment. And so it shifts everything to your fight or flight. Everything goes to your muscles, getting you ready to run. You start pouring out glucose so that you have enough energy to run or fight. But if you don't need it to run or fight, if you're not a professional athlete and you're about to, go on have a competition, that's when that